Hi there and welcome to JCB Tools. My name's Adrian and today we're going to look at this petrol generator. So this particular one is a G3600P open-framed petrol generator. I'm going to open the box, get the contents out on the table so you can see exactly what you get. So as you can see, I got the generator up here on the table. Various accessories, a little bit of assembly, but I'll take you through that. Now in the manual you may see that it shows how to fit the handle, but actually in most cases the handle's already fitted. So no need to go through that stage. 2 wheels, 2 feet, bag of nuts, bolts and washers, 2 little axles for the wheels. It does come with a funnel and pipe, very useful for filling the engine oil. We'll show you how to do that. And one tool we're going to need, I brought my own here, is a 10mm socket. A 10mm spanner would do just as well, but I've just brought a little quarter drive 10mm socket. And another accessory it comes with is the spark plug spanner and the T-bar for that. So whenever you need to change the spark plug, you've got a specific spanner for the job. And finally, the user manual. Now I do recommend that you read the user manual thoroughly before you start. So I've got the machine hanging over the edge of my table here. Now the first thing to do is fit these 2 feet. Fairly obvious, you'll see 2 captivated nuts, 4 bolts out of the bag, 2 for each foot, up from the underside. We'll just loosely thread those into the holes and I'll tighten them up with my ratchet. To fit the wheels, we have an axle, a wheel, R-clip and a washer. On the wheel, you'll see a large boss on one side, which is quite high, and obviously a very short one on the other. We fit the axle through from the short side. I can then place the washer over the shaft and fit the wheel to the machine. I've already done the one on the other side. I'll show you that quickly. So if I just lift the machine up and I can place the axle through the hole in the frame into position, then we'll move on to the R-clip. So I've got the R-clip here and you can see the hole in the axle down here. I'll simply line up the straight part, push down, and that's the axle retained. And I'll do exactly the same on the other side. And the next thing we need to do is put engine oil in the engine. This is vitally important and the machine won't actually start if you don't put any oil in. It does have a float switch, so at any time you find it doesn't start, check your oil level. So dipstick is down here underneath the center of the control panel. I'll remove that. I've got a bit of blue roll to hand. I've already filled this particular engine with oil. I'll just take the dipstick away. So SAE30 or 15W40 engine oil, this is where the funnel comes into play. If you've got a jug with a flexible spout on, you can use that as well. But if you haven't, obviously this funnel comes in very useful. So yeah, pour the oil in just nice and slowly. Obviously fill it up gradually and keep checking it along the way. So this engine oil is perfect on level. So what you'll find is when you've got the oil level correct, the oil will be full in the bottom of the engine to the point where it's about to come back out again, just over the weir point, we call it, of the bottom of the hole. Obviously it does have a graduated dipstick as well, but that's the best gauge. Engine oil up to the point where if you did put any more in, it would literally pour itself back out. That's with the machine on nice level ground. So this is just below that level, but that's perfectly fine. And I'll screw the dipstick back in clockwise and just make sure that it's in firmly. So that's filling the engine oil. And as I said, SAE30, 15W40 or 1030 oil as well will do. So next we're going to put fuel in the fuel tank. So always do this in a well-ventilated area. Outdoors is best. I'm not going to physically do it here in the studio. So it's a 15-litre tank. Unscrew anti-clockwise. I can remove the lid. Okay, nice, sturdy, strongly built lid. There is a strainer in here, which you'll see. So you can fill fuel into the tank and you'll see this red ring on the strainer. I'll just bring it up into sight. You see this red ring? So when this strainer is down in the tank, I'll just drop it back in. Never fill it above the level of that red ring. And that would be the full mark as far as looking into the tank. And obviously it does come with a fuel gauge as well. So fresh, unleaded petrol for these. So that's all the preparation done. We put all the wheels and the feet on, we fill the engine with oil, and we've added the fuel. So I'm not going to take this poly bag off, but as you can see, it's really easy to move around with the handle and the wheel kit that comes with your machine. You will need to take this off. Okay, so we're going to go through the controls. Okay, so the first thing we've got is the fuel tap. So fuel on, vertical plane, fuel off, horizontal plane. So to turn the fuel on, we would be like that. Just a point of note, if you're ever transporting or moving the machine around, especially in the back of a vehicle or what have you, when you finish using the machine, always turn the fuel tap off. There's a float in the float bowl, which when being transported can bounce around, it can let fuel pass through, and you could end up with fuel leaks or flooding the engine, so then it won't start on the next time you start it. So always turn the fuel tap off when you're transporting the generator. So we're going to need fuel on. So the second part of the carburetor side is the choke lever. This goes from left to right. This position would be where it is when the engine's running. So for a cold start, we turn the choke on. We push it to the left if you're looking from the end of the machine. That would be the choke on. We'll go to the front, we'll start the machine, and then what we would do is once it's started, we just turn the choke off. If it's been running for, let's say, 10 minutes or so and the engine is warm, you won't probably need to use the choke every time. When the engine's warm, you may not need the choke. Some do, some don't. But if you find you don't need it, then obviously don't do it as a matter of course, turning the choke on every time. So we'll look at the control panel now. Fairly obvious, on off. That's the main switch. Push up towards the on position to switch the engine on. When we switch it off, it kills the power to the spark plug and the engine will stop. So before starting, we'd obviously need to turn it on. Another thing, when we do start a generator up, it's very important that we have the circuit breakers turned off. We don't want to be starting the generator up with a load applied, leads connected into the generator and the circuit breaker on. That can damage the AVR. So very good practice. Circuit breaker off, start the engine, let it settle down for a couple of minutes. When you're ready, plug the appliance in, switch the circuit breaker on. Okay, so that's the on-off switch and the circuit breaker. Up would be on, down is off. Okay, we have a little DC breaker here. So this button, you'll always see it in. You'll never see it pop out unless you overload this little socket here. So this is the old cigarette lighter type socket. Obviously you can get various adapters for these with crocodile clips on for charging external batteries. You can get little USB plugs for these, but it's just an added feature. So I'll just make sure that's closed. If you overload this more than the 8.3 amps, this little overload button will pop out. Leave it a couple of minutes, remove the load, push the button back in, and it's ready to go again. So, display. So this display has three features. It'll show the voltage that the machine is producing. It'll show the hertz, so typically around the 50 hertz nominal, and then it shows hours, and that'll be the total amount of hours that the machine has run. And to scroll between them, we just push this little select button, and it'll scroll between the three features. So moving on, obviously yellow outlet socket, it's 16 amp, 110 volt. In a generator case, it's 115. And it is protected by a little 16 amp circuit breaker again underneath. If you overload it, this will pop out, remove the load, reduce your load, wait a few minutes, put the reset back in, and then carry on. On this side, we have a 16 amp 230 outlet. Okay, much the same sort of thing. This is governed by the main circuit breaker, so it doesn't have an individual reset. So what we've got here is the toggle switch. Now this is three positions. This way, as you would imagine, would be when you're using 115. The central will give you no output from either. This way will give you 230. Best if you're changing from one to the other, or if you've got it in the center, don't use this to remove the load. Use the main breaker. So if we're switching between, main breaker off, change to 230, plug our appliance in, switch the main breaker on. And the same to go back to 110. Main breaker off, change to 110, turn the circuit breaker on. That's always very good practice. If your machine is in a semi-permanent position, there's an earthing point here. So it's always good to use a ground spike to earth the machine to ground with an appropriate cable, and you can connect up to the metal body of the machine via this earthing point here. So just a little demonstration. Obviously the 110 16 amp. It doesn't come with these plugs. Most of your appliances, site appliances and what have you, would have a 16 amp, these commando style plugs on. Simply fit it in. There we go, it's done. So obviously this is a replacement plug. Exactly the same with the 230. There we go. So that's the way they work. But these are available in any electrical factor, so I believe we do have them in our parts department as well. So we've been through all the controls now. Starting procedure. Main circuit breaker is off. On-off switch switched on. Fuel tap on. Choke on. Pull the recoil till you feel resistance. There it is. Go back in and then swift pull on the recoil. The engine will start. Turn the choke off. Leave it for a moment or two. Once the engine's settled down, it's ready to produce power. So when we want to stop the engine, switch off the main breaker, remove any appliances, switch it off, engine will stop. Turn off the fuel tap if we're going to transport it, and we're ready to go. Well, I do hope you found this demonstration useful. For more information on this or any of our other products, visit jcbtools.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and thank you for watching.